Brigid was born to an Irish Catholic family and spent her preschool years on Chicago's South Side. At age 5, her progressive lawyer parents, who had always been active in civil rights, especially in the labor movement, moved to Springfield to work for Governor Walker. Brigid went to Catholic grade school and Catholic high school, but she told me she was always taught by her parents to follow her own conscience in all matters of choice. At Knox College in Southern Illinois, she double majored in history and race, gender, and culture studies. In grad school in the early 90s, she did an American Studies program and wrote a thesis, I believe, on slave-owning Indians and immigration. And in 1992, she returned to Springfield, and at a Planned Parenthood dinner with her mom, she was approached and offered a job by Pam Sutherland, Planned Parenthood's Director of Public Policy, and she is still there working hard for our constitutional rights. Brigid currently lives in an old schoolhouse on 3 rural acres with her 3 dogs and a cat who all agree on the right to be neutered. She has fostered over 70 dogs and also leads puppy training classes where she teaches them good behavior. So my question to Brigid is, can you train politicians to also behave and do the right thing? So I now look forward to hearing your view on what is happening in our odd and not so united states of America and what you are doing about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I sounded so interesting. So I'm really happy to be here today. I'm glad that you all came out. Months and months ago, when I was asked to come, I said, well, why don't I do a talk about standing for reproductive justice in 2016? And I was going to talk all about the reproductive justice movement and where it came philosophically, where we've come from, and where we're going to go in the coming year. And then over the course of the last several months, the proverbial you-know-what hit the fan. And so my talk has changed a little bit, but I don't want to shortchange reproductive justice. So I just wanted to give you all where we come from in the reproductive justice movement, and that Planned Parenthood and the services we provide are part of a larger picture. The reproductive justice movement came out of there was an international conference on women, and there were a group of African American women at the conference that really felt that their communities were not being addressed by the women's rights movement and the pro-choice movement. And so they came up with looking at that the issue is not just about women being able to have birth control or having an abortion, but it really is looking at a more global picture of women and their lives. And it comes down to making sure that women, that you look at the physical, mental, spiritual, political, economical, and social well-being of women and girls. And until all of those pieces come together, women cannot really have true reproductive justice. So reproductive justice means access to health care and a full range of health care. It also means that you have sick time so that you can take off work to go and receive that health care. It means that you have child care so that you have a true choice when you're making a decision about when and whether to have a child. You have the economic means to have a child. You have the ability to care for that child. So we at Planned Parenthood, I think our movement started back almost 100 years ago. Next year we'll be celebrating our 100th anniversary. It started with a very simple goal. Margaret Sanger saw immigrant women in New York City as a public health nurse needing access to birth control because they could not control their fertility. A lot of them were having pregnancy after pregnancy, miscarriages, stillbirths. They had sickness. They were dying in stillbirth. Many of them were resorting to unsafe abortions. And so she looked at this one very specific thing that women needed. Reproductive justice would say these women also were living in terrible conditions. They were living in poverty. They did not have the help in the community to support to take care of their children. There's a whole wide range. So over the course of time, Planned Parenthood has broadened its perspective. And now, after over 20 years in my career, where I started and we were very focused, and part of this was we were reacting to all the hostility legislatively. I, as a lobbyist, now have broadened, and we work on things like sick time, sick leave for people. We worked on the Affordable Care Act. We are good friends with our fellow labor lobbyists and take interest in things. Whenever I can figure out a way to work in Planned Parenthood, I try to, because I know our patients need the support of all of these parts of their lives so that they have true reproductive justice. As I said, Planned Parenthood comes to this as the perspective of a health care provider, and that's what we are, and that's what we do. We provide health care. It's amazing because if you watch certain media outlets or listen to certain rhetoric, you never know that we provide health care. And part of that is because there's a lot of people who don't think abortion is health care, and they think abortion is the only thing that we do. But we actually provide a wide range of women's and men's health services. Across the nation, we have health centers, I think, in 49 out of the 50 states. In Illinois, we have 17 health centers across the state. We serve almost 3 million people across the country, and in Illinois, we serve over 60,000 people each year. So, and our patients really depend on this for this care. A lot of our patients are low income. Many of them are uninsured. And many of them, we are the first line of health care that they see. Sometimes we're the only health care provider we see. And like I said, we provide a lot of different things for people that are in the reproductive health realm. So nationwide, we provide about 400,000 Pap tests, 500,000 breast exams, and 4.5 million STI tests and treatments a year. So we're seeing a lot of people, we're touching a lot of people. I'm amazed at the number of people who have been our patient. I'm also even more amazed by the number of people who have a family member or a friend who has been to Planned Parenthood. So we are everywhere. And that makes us a pretty good target. So this summer, while I was off because I had some reproductive health care and had surgery this summer, on July 14th, the first of a series of videos came out. They were produced by the Center for Medical Progress, which I'm not sure what kind of progress they want to make, because my understanding is they want to set us back about 100 years pre-Margaret Sanger's vision about what reproductive health care should be for women. But anyway, this organization, Center for Medical Progress, released videos that alleged that Planned Parenthood was violating the law for fetal tissue donation. And we came out very strongly immediately and said we have been following all the laws, we always follow the law. And in the 2 affiliates in the country that do this, that it's not common at Planned Parenthood, but for those affiliates where women desire to donate fetal tissue for medical research, we offer that opportunity for them, and we only take reimbursement for the costs of doing the service. So it's illegal to profit off of it. We do not profit off of it. And but if you watch the videos, you would get a very different impression about what was going on at Planned Parenthood. The videos were highly edited, very distorting, and that is because the organization behind the videos is a very deceptive organization. They formed with the intent of attacking Planned Parenthood. They created a nonprofit registered with the IRS as a nonprofit, said they were going to be doing medical research, and then people affiliated with the organization took on false identities and went into conferences where there were people, Planned Parenthood staff and other providers across the nation, and under their false identities, they surreptitiously recorded people, and then they put these videos together, and they spliced them and edited them in a way that was very, very deceptive, leaving out very important statements. So they'll have something in there with the doctor sounding like she's saying one thing, and they leave out the sentence that says, we have to follow all the laws. So it makes her sound like she's doing actually the opposite of what we actually are doing. So we at Planned Parenthood hired an outside firm and had them analyze the videos that were released. And then also Center for Medical Progress released longer versions and said this was all the stuff. But even the longer versions, this forensic researcher, that this is what they do, they looked at the videos and said, no, they've been edited here and here and here, and this has been cut out, and we don't know what happened at this point because that's not a complete sentence. And so these really cannot be used as any kind of evidence of anything. And now there's litigation against the Center for Medical Progress. The National Abortion Federation is suing them because they came into the conferences under false identification, signed non-disclosure agreements that are there to protect the safety of our providers, and then violated those agreements. So there's lots of litigation going over this. The leader of the organization has said he wants to plead the fifth in court. Which I find very interesting. And what you need to know is that this group of people, it's headed up by a very young 20-something gentleman, but he is connected to some of the longest-running, oldest organizers of the anti-choice movement, including Troy Newman, who heads up Operation Rescue. And Troy Newman is known for being quite radical. Operation Rescue in the 80s and early 90s would blockade clinics. They would chain themselves to doors. Troy Newman actually has rationalized that it would be justifiable homicide to kill a doctor who performs abortion. And most recently, he was deported from Australia just a couple months ago because he went in and the Australian government viewed him as a dangerous individual. He was there for a speaking circuit, and they said they revoked his visa and kicked him out of the country. So this is not a group that is what they purport to be. But despite the fact that we came out and we're very upfront that we're not doing anything illegal, that the videos are doctored and deceptive and they're a fraud, there still in many states were investigations to see what we were doing that was wrong, which is quite interesting considering that we in most of these states don't even engage in a fetal tissue research program. But so far, every state that has investigated Planned Parenthood has found no wrongdoing. And the same is at the congressional level. There, I think, are now at least 5 committees that have been looking into Planned Parenthood. There's a new one that hasn't met yet. The most recent one, that is Cecile Richards, the president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. I think she testified for 5 hours. And if any of you caught that on C-SPAN, that woman is amazing because she was constantly interrupted. She was constantly challenged. She kept her cool. She said she stood up for us. She stood up for her patients. And at the end, the chair of the committee had to release a report saying they haven't done anything wrong. And the hearing also became just a whole diatribe against abortion. It wasn't really about the videos anymore, which is the problem when you get politicians involved. You know, the videos are bad enough, but then you hand all this over to politicians and it just becomes even more crazy. And politicians have a way of loving things like this because it can help them with their current agenda. And I want you all to know that even though the Center for Medical Progress was saying, oh, this is very important and we need FBI investigations and everything, they waited a very long time. If they really found wrongdoing, They waited a very long time. They released the videos to the public. They didn't go to the authorities, but they did go to members of Congress before the videos were released, so that these anti-choice members of Congress could be prepared with what they were going to say and have their legislation already drafted. So they're working with the politicians. And I have a button on my purse. It's down there. I was at an event recently, and it says, "Keep politics out of health care." And I'm a strong believer of that. We don't really need politicians making these decisions. They're not doctors and nurses. They're politicians, and they cause us problems. So when you get politicians talking about things, you get even more distortions. And I think I could give you many, many examples, but the biggest one was Carly Fiorina in one of the presidential debates, where she made up something that she swears was in one of the videos. And even the folks who made the videos were like, this wasn't in the video. And she even Fox News said it wasn't in the video. And when challenged, this wasn't in the video, she says, no, I don't accept that at all. So she made her own ad and put in footage that wasn't in the video because she needed to make up her own video, I guess, that confirmed what she believed she thinks she saw. But this is the kind of rhetoric and the kind of climate we're in. I loved when you opened with talking about you believe in science and reason and truth. We're not talking about any of that. It's very interesting that of the 5 committees, only one of them asked Planned Parenthood to come. Our CEO came. All the other ones have never heard from Planned Parenthood. They've never heard from a doctor who performs abortion. They're not interested in the science or the truth about. They haven't talked to our patients. That's not their concern. Their true agenda is Troy Newman's agenda. And Troy Newman, I'll remind you, he's on the board of the Center for Medical Progress, and he's the head of Operation Rescue. And he came to my hometown, Springfield, Illinois. He had a rally in front of our health center there, said very vile things about our staff and patients. He also spoke at a church, the I Worship Center in Springfield, and he said the videos were designed to destroy Planned Parenthood, and furthermore, they are there to end access to abortion. That is the goal. So, as I said in the beginning, Planned Parenthood serves over 3 million people. We are everywhere. We are the easy target. It's much easier for them to target us than a standalone private physician who has a clinic somewhere, right? You go after Planned Parenthood, we're everywhere, we're known, and so they went after us, but they're really going after everyone and our right to access health care. And what this means is they're not just going after abortion. In the name of abortion, they're also going after women's health care in general. This is about access to birth control. This is about access to affordable health care for women. And they raise the part that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but it really is a big picture that we're talking about. So if you look at what's been going on in Congress, they started out in the summer with ending the Title X program. Now, the Title X program is our nation's family planning program. It was a bill carried by President George Herbert Walker Bush, sponsored by him and signed into law by President Nixon. This is a program that nationwide allows women to get affordable reproductive health care if they're low income and uninsured. It does not pay for abortion, but that's what they decided to defund. And part of that is because Planned Parenthood is a big Title X provider. Then they moved into, in the winter, banning insurance coverage of abortion, because why would women be able to pay with their own money a premium to get the health care that they want and need? Oh no, we can't have that. We're going to restrict private companies from offering full health care coverage to women that women pay for with their own private dollars. They also, and they started it actually before the videos, but they continued, and we had several votes on things like 20-week bans on abortion, which go after vulnerable women who often have found out something is catastrophically wrong in their pregnancy later, because most abortions, the vast majority of abortions, happen in the first trimester. But they went through a series, and I have honestly lost count of how many votes there have been on various restrictions to abortion, defunding Title X, and also defunding Planned Parenthood. Those have been happening at a regular level for the last couple months. And they want to defund us, although none of the federal money. There's this thing called the Hyde Amendment from Congressman Henry Hyde from Illinois that says you can't use federal money for abortion. So what they're doing is they're cutting off the regular health care that all women need: breast exams, pap tests, birth control, all that kind of stuff. So while it's about abortion, it's really about health care for all women. But there's no war on women, according to Ben Carson. They're not attacking women, even though the rhetoric around this is shameful to women. Women really should just be chaste and not want or need these kinds of things, and therefore there's no war. But I don't often understand what Ben Carson says. So he says it's what's in a woman, but not a woman. And I don't know, but a lot of us women would say what's in us makes us women. I can't figure him out. But we're fighting back. And there's your wonderful Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. Sometimes I give talks and I am in areas where I can't, all your people are awful. But your people are great. You have Jan Schakowsky, who's wonderful. I want to give a shout out also to Senator Ira Silverstein, who has a 100% record with Planned Parenthood, and Lou Lang. And I realized yesterday, and it was too late, I couldn't put him in my slideshow, but I have a great picture of Representative Lou Lang holding a pink "I Stand with Planned Parenthood" sign. And I'm like, oh, darn, I didn't put him in the slideshow. So you have some great people here who are very responsive and who will listen. So Jan is wonderful. She came out and said, identified, this is what this is really about. We know that this is an attack on women. We know that it's an attack on an organization that serves women. And we know that women need access to this care. So she is wonderful. And people really do support us, despite the fact that you would think that Congress was responding to, 75% of the American population is upset about this issue based on the amount of time that they have worked on this. But actually, the majority of the public loves us. They know us. They know what we do. We have the support out there. So despite a very grueling summer and fall, I was feeling like, okay, the public gets this. Our polling shows the public gets this. We have been getting wonderful responses from donors and supporters. And so we're going to muddle through this and we're going to make it through. And then we had Black Friday. And that was a very, very sad day in the Planned Parenthood community. We mourn the loss of the police officer and the two others who were killed. They were all parents. They were all doing something good that day. The officer was serving his community. The mom was there helping a friend. The man was there. He's a dad and an Iraq veteran. He was there to be with a friend. He was shot in the parking lot, and he, despite being shot, went inside the lobby to warn everybody what was happening in the parking lot, and he ended up dying, but he tried to save others. These were good people, and thankfully, because of our security protocols, the staff went into action, got people into back rooms, and it could have been a lot worse, which is really sad. There were also 9 other people who were injured. Some of them, I think, may still be in the hospital. And the health center was very severely damaged. It's still closed and will need a lot of repairs. Because when you go into a place with that kind of weaponry, You damage people terribly, and you damage everything around you. So it was a terribly, terribly awful day. I wish I could say that this was a shock, but it wasn't. I mean, in a way it was shocking, but just before I was leaving, I went to Las Vegas. It's a family tradition for Thanksgiving. And just before I was leaving that week, I was talking to my boss. Now, she's been working for Planned Parenthood for 35 years. I've been working for Planned Parenthood for 23. So we remember what it was like in the days of the blockades and the threats and everything. We've gone through an anthrax threat. We've gone through arson attempts. We've gone through all kinds of stuff. And to give you a little uplead, just in Illinois, in July, our Aurora Health Center was firebombed. Thankfully, it was not damaged due to the quality construction of our front door. In August, our Effingham Health Center was sprayed with very hateful graffiti. And there were also across the country 2 other arson attempts. There have been a very noted increase in hateful speech, harassment, threats, people trying to get into health centers who shouldn't be there, all that kind of stuff. And I said to Pam, this reminds me of when I first started at Planned Parenthood. Because the month I started at Planned Parenthood was when Dr. Gunn was killed. And the people who were killed in Colorado make the 9th, 10th, and 11th victim of this type of violence. This is not new to us. People have died over the last 22 years. And this is very serious. It's one thing to joke about politicians making stupid statements during a debate, but the fact of the matter is there are people out there who take this stuff seriously, and they're willing to act on it very violently. When you call Planned Parenthood employees murderers, there can be consequences to that, and I think we saw that on Black Friday. Now, this doesn't mean that we're giving up. We are going to stay strong. We are going to be here for our patients and for our communities, and that is why we were open the next day on Saturday. We are happy to say that every single one of our employees in Illinois have showed up for work. They remain resolved. They are feeling strong and firm, and our patients have been wonderful. They are still coming, and in fact, some of them have come in, and we thought we were going to have tough discussions with patients, them saying, am I safe here or whatever, but the patients have come in, and some of them have said to our nurses, how are you doing? Are you okay? We're like, wow, this is great. Because in the real world, we all care about each other, right? And this is something that is important, and we're going to continue to care about each other. Unfortunately, our opposition has not been deterred by what happened on Black Friday. They are doubling down in their speak. This is Judy Brown of the American Life League. And the American Life League has been around for a very long time. This is considered a mainstream pro-life group. And this is their rhetoric. This has been their rhetoric prior, and this is their rhetoric right after the shooting. And it's a wonder. I don't know how you can't, for some people to logically follow through with this, that violence is okay. And again, Ann Scheidler of the Pro-Life Action League, who actually went to college with my Aunt Maggie at Mundelein in Chicago, this is Pro-Life Action League is based here in Illinois, and it's our fault. It's Planned Parenthood's fault. I didn't see in anything that I read, and I searched around before I worked on this to try to find quotes of what the other side was saying about this. And I haven't seen anything with sympathy for the victims. It's all Planned Parenthood's fault. It's our fault that an Iraq veteran was killed. It's our fault that a police officer was killed. They also very adamantly deny that anything they're saying here inspired Mr. Deere to do what he did, even though it's very clear that he has had a long-standing right-wing Christian philosophy, and he is opposed Planned Parenthood. I read that his ex-wife said that 20 years ago he glued the lock shut at a Planned Parenthood clinic. This is somebody who is, I think some would like to say he's deranged or he's a maniac or whatever. I think one of the presidential candidates called him a maniac. That may be true, but he also is anti-choice, and we can't get away from that. So these are more mainstream groups. Pro-Life Action League goes out there. They do the bloody fetus photos, but they're out there. A lot of people get their emails. They get press coverage. This is not an underground radical group. But their rhetoric actually is not that different from the Army of God, who's been linked with some of the killings and firebombings. And the Army of God says that it's justified for a doctor to be killed if he performs abortion. And you will see that the rhetoric really is not that different. So it concerns me. It really deeply concerns me, the climate that we have been living in for the last few months. And that this climate is going from the most radical to people who are running for office and are getting lots of TV coverage. And my disappointment is we need leadership at this time. As our Dawn Legans, who is with our national office, said, after Black Friday, we needed our leaders, our politicians, our elected officials to come together, to join together, to stand up and say this is wrong, and to give people reassurance that they should be able to access health care and be safe. And we did have some of that. I mean, our president was very clear. He's very upset about all of the mass shootings that have been happening. And I don't think we can lump them all together, but we clearly have a problem in this country with mass shootings. And it's a problem that no other industrialized country has. And again, our wonderful Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, she spoke out too and said, she's going to be there and still standing for us. That committee that's going to be meeting in Congress, she is the ranking Democratic member. And she says, I'm going to be in the room, and I'm going to be standing up to protect the access to health care for women. So she's not daunted by what happened, and she's still going to provide leadership for us. But on the other side, not so much leadership. They are continuing with their same old playbook. They are going to, it's like Black Friday didn't happen, we're just going to keep going down that path. So Donald Trump still wants to defund Planned Parenthood, and he also wants to look at overturning Roe v. Wade and ending access to abortion, which we know is the true agenda. And so, just a few days, less than a week after the shootings, the Senate voted to defund Planned Parenthood. And that bill is on the way to President Obama, who has promised to veto it. So let's not take a break from this. Let's not rethink what's happening. We're just going to keep plowing ahead. And that is, I am afraid, what's going to continue to happen. I was going to talk about reproductive justice and standing up for reproductive justice in 2016. I was hoping that I could talk to you about our proactive agenda at Planned Parenthood of Illinois. We have some really good stuff out there that we want to work on. Strengthening our state's contraceptive coverage law, making sure that people who have insurance under someone else's plan, like a family plan where you're now an adult can stay in their parents' plan up to age 26, that your insurance information remains private. Things like that will allow people to have better access to health care, ensure their privacy and their personal autonomy. We have a number of things. We're working on trying to get rid of the state law that bans abortion coverage in Medicaid so that poor women have the same choices available to them as all women of means do. We also have a bill that we're working on for refusals, religious refusals, so that people who are refused health care by a physician or a hospital that doesn't, has religious opposition to whatever they need, that they get the information and the referral they need. We have this great proactive agenda. We're still committed to pushing it. But I'm afraid that a lot of that is going to be clouded over because all the air is being sucked out of the room by what's been going on in the last few months. And unfortunately, I don't think Congress or our General Assembly has a lot of interest when they're going into an election year of trying to do things that are proactive for people and that help people. Instead, I think it's going to be attacking people. The climate is all about marginalizing and attacking people. We see this with women, we see it with immigrants, minorities. It really is distressful. I came from a very politically active and interested family where we watched, as a child, I watched all the debates, Republican or Democrat. We always watched the president give the State of the Union, no matter which side of the aisle he came from. And I just don't remember this kind of thing. Last election was the first time we had every Republican candidate opposed to access to birth control. Not just abortion, but birth control. We now have people running for president who oppose access to abortion, even in cases of rape and incest. And I will remind you that our nation's family planning program was sponsored and signed into law by Republican elected officials. Things have really, really shifted dramatically. In the state of Illinois, we've always had bipartisan support for reproductive justice. That has withered away, and I'm really quite disappointed by it. Because I think what we need to, and that is part of the partisan shift, the division that's been happening. And I hope we can find ways to come together, because more of the same ahead in 2016 is not going to help anybody. And we at Planned Parenthood, we're looking for solutions. We're looking to improve the lives of the people we serve and the people in our communities. And that's what our goal is. And so I do have this wonderful proactive agenda that I'm going to be working on, but I also anticipate I'm going to have lots of nasty stuff introduced. We already had, after the videos, we had a slew of bills and resolutions introduced at the state level as well, to defund Planned Parenthood, all kinds of things, investigations, all kinds of good stuff. Those have not gone anywhere. I think that is the only instance where I might be grateful for the state's budget impasse, because that is just like nothing's happening. But next year, who knows? It will be a very busy year, and I'm going to need help. We all are going to need help, because Planned Parenthood is committed to staying open. We're going to be there. We're going to move forward. We are going to fight the bad bills. We're going to move forward on good stuff. We are going to be there for our patients. We're going to continue to provide health care. We have been around for 100 years. We're not going anywhere, okay? Our doors stay open. And we need you to help us do that. So I'm asking you today to stand up for reproductive justice and join us and stand with Planned Parenthood. Because it's not just about Planned Parenthood, it's about the patients we serve, their children, their families, all of you in our communities. We all work together. And if we go back to the beginning, reproductive justice is a bigger picture. It's not just about the woman getting the pap test at our offices or getting the abortion that she needs or being referred for adoption services if that's what she needs. It's about making sure that the whole community is supportive of her, that she has the life that allows her to make these decisions herself, and that it respects her autonomy and her dignity. And so we all have to work on that together and come together. And it's a little hard, it's a little distressing and depressing in this very antagonistic climate that we're in. But I want to be positive, and I want us all to come together and stand up, not be intimidated, and I'd like you all to stand with us. So what can you do? Because I have, a few years ago, I went to a talk by some young people, college students, and they were working on healthcare reform, and they said, it's really great for all of you to tell us how horrible the world is, climate change, there's going to be no future for us young people, it's horrible. Oh my God, college, tuition, it's terrible, we're never going to find a job and we're always going to be in debt. You're taking away our rights all the time. You got to give us something to do. All this negativity is awful. And that is true. And there are things we can do. And the first thing is to stay informed. So I encourage all of you, and it's ppiaaction.org. That's Planned Parenthood Illinois Action. If you Google that, or if you remember the address, you'll come up on our Planned Parenthood Illinois Action page, and right there at the top on the right is a place for you to put in your email address, and you can get our email alerts. And they are for federal things going on in Congress, and they're also for state things. So you will find out the next time the Senate decides to defund Planned Parenthood, and you can contact Dick Durbin and Mark Kirk. If it's at the state level, you can send an email to Lou Lang and say, hey, Lou, stand strong with us, which he does. And you will know what's going on, which will help you then when you're having conversations with families and friends or coworkers. You can say, wait, that doesn't sound really right. This is what I understand the bill does, or this is how this is going. So we want you to stay informed, and this also gives you a very easy means to be active in contacting the people who make these decisions. So that's the first step. I also want you to, by staying informed, we have social media is great. I will be honest, I only have a Facebook account because I'm a little bit older than a lot of people who are into social media. So I don't tweet, I don't understand the Twitter thing, and I don't have an Instagram account. I really only have time for Facebook because I actually also personally face-to-face interact with humans. But whatever your thing is, I'm respectful of it all, so we have accounts for everything, and we try to share everything. We had a wonderful vigil yesterday in front of, across the street from our health center on Michigan Avenue. Jan Schakowsky showed up. She was wonderful. Representative Will Gazzardi was there, and it really was put together. I mean, if you think about it, this is a week after the shootings. And normally at Planned Parenthood, we like to be very organized and stuff, but people were on a Facebook page saying, we need to do something, and should we show up on Saturday, and da-da-da-da-da, and we're like, okay, people, don't just show up, we'll organize something. So we had a little something for an hour, a nice vigil, and it was all organized through Facebook. So a lot of times you'll find out what's going on through these means, and you'll also be able to keep in touch with us through them. And if you are on Facebook or Twitter, there's this lovely thing, Twibbon.com has this way to make, to update your Facebook picture, your Twitter picture, your profile picture. I did it. It's super duper easy. And you just go to Twibbon.com, support Stand with PP, and they take your profile picture and they superimpose the nice little pink Stand with PP logo, and then you can let everybody know that you're standing with us, and it's a super easy way, and these things have a tendency of becoming viral, which is great, and it's just a way we want to, it seems like something simple and you're not really doing much, but part of it is us not being intimidated and standing up and saying, hey, yeah, I'm here and I support Planned Parenthood. And all your nastiness is not getting to me. I'm going to be public about this. And then lastly, it is an election year. And so I expect everyone out there, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. That's not my job. What I am going to tell you is be informed. Figure out where candidates stand. Reproductive justice is one issue, but it is related. You know, it's a big picture thing. It's about poverty. It's about all kinds of different issues. So get yourself fully informed about all of the candidates, not just for president, but for every level on down. Do your research, and then don't forget the two important dates. Now, we have early voting, so you can actually find out your locations. You can go in and find out your local voting office, and if you want to go early or go on a Saturday, that's perfectly fine. I love early voting. But go ahead and make sure that you vote. And lastly, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for inviting me here today. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share with you about what's going on with Planned Parenthood, and that we are standing strong and that we want to stand with you. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks for a great presentation. So I have two questions. One is, will you accept a check if I hand you one today, or would you rather I went online? And my second one, how much of the money that Planned Parenthood nationwide receives is government money, and how much of it is private money, and should we just, make it all private so that we don't have to depend on the vagaries of government?
Okay, yes, I will take a check today. Thank you so very much. I would love if we could raise the private money. Unfortunately, it's expensive to provide health care. I'll be quite honest. And I'm not sure how that would work. I also think that if our government has programs that are designed to provide health care for people, I see no reason why, if Planned Parenthood is a qualified provider providing quality care, that they cannot participate in those programs. And that is what we are. And we have found in the states that have tried to push us out of, say, the Medicaid program, the courts have come in and said no. Planned Parenthood is qualified. They are willing to be a Medicaid provider. We cannot shut them out. And I think it's only fair that if we are willing to do Medicaid, I'll be honest with you, Medicaid rates are not that great, which is part of the reason we also fundraise. But we want to be in these programs because for a lot of people, Medicaid or the Title X program, that's the only way they can afford to get care. And we are experts in this type of care, reproductive health care. And a lot of the women who come to us because we're experts in it. And we are not, you can come to us, there will be no judgment. You can tell us all your secrets about what's been going on in your life, and we're going to be like, okay then, now what do you need? You don't have to worry about that we're going to judge you for anything. So I think we should still participate, although I think there really still is a need because those programs don't cover everything. We still need to raise private funding too. And next.
Brigid, thank you, but you are too shy. You should have said, in addition to signing up for the email, we should all go online, click that button in the upper right-hand corner, and donate. There's actually 5 separate Planned Parenthoods I think that we all need to support, because there's the charity and the political at the national and the Illinois, plus there's the international. And then there's Personal PAC, which is critical to keeping pro-choice politicians in Illinois, personalpac.org. And last but not least, ethical humanists, please, this coming July 4th, join us. We always march in we have a pro-choice contingent in the Evanston 4th of July parade. It's great fun. So please come on out.
Well, thank you. Yes, thank you. Of course, please donate to us. We need your support. I'm here at Planned Parenthood of Illinois, our charity, which is the health center side, but we do have a national organization, and we do have political organizations that try to deal with all the stuff that's going to happen in 2016. So thank you for that. Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you notice in the audience, there are many men here as well.
Mm-hmm.
And almost all men have wives or sisters, daughters. And I'd like to ask, how does reproductive health care for women affect men, or how does it involve us? Particularly, I notice it's Planned Parenthood, not Planned Motherhood. So.
That is a very good point. While Planned Parenthood mainly serves women, we do have male patients, and that is because it takes 2 to reproduce, quite frankly. Well, with technology, not always necessarily, but and men do need reproductive health care services, and reproductive justice is something that is more than just women. First of all, men, you do not have a lot of options when it comes to birth control, and I think you should be ticked off about that. Okay? That is one area where things are not equal and just, but it also means that the burden falls on the woman, and so I am glad that there are men here who love and support the women in their lives, and that is part of the role for men, is to make sure that the women, since the options are there for women, women are the ones who get pregnant, we need the men to stand with us. And it is all of us coming together. It means dads stand for their daughters, Men stand for their wives and their girlfriends and their moms. And we are all together in this, because otherwise it doesn't work. And so it is about parenthood, and it is about making sure that everyone, mom, dad, everyone has the ability to parent the way they want to, and they have the environment that is supportive of that. And if they don't want to parent, that the environment is supportive of that as well.
Hi. Is the veto from President Obama expected this calendar year? And if that does happen, what do you expect to happen after that from the Senate and Congress?
Well, I think that Congress knew that when they passed this, that it was going to get vetoed. They do not have the ability to override the veto, because the Senate just doesn't have enough Republicans. And a few of the Republicans, including our own Senator Mark Kirk, voted against the defunding. I want to point that out. That although, and I hate, because we're not partisan, Planned Parenthood is not partisan, we take supporters from any political party, we don't care. But it seems to be these days that unfortunately the Republican Party is opposed to us on a lot of issues. But I wanted to point him out as a little star there. But so they won't be able to override it. So there's no chance that the defunding is going to become law. So it does become a political statement, political posturing, and it's used, I assume it will be used electorally. On the timing, I'm not sure, because I'm not sure if the legislation has actually been delivered to the president yet, and then he has a certain amount of time in which to veto it, and I'm not sure whether he will just do it right away or whether he will make a statement about it. That's for the White House to decide how they're going to do it. But I can assume that probably there will be more votes in 2016, and we'll just continue to do this. How many times have they voted to repeal Obamacare? I mean, I've lost count. It's been so many. Who's next? Yes.
Hi. Are you familiar with the Decree 770 through Romania? What occurred? Decree 770 with Romania, where they abolished abortions. That was in 1960s, I believe.
Not super familiar. I do kind of remember it a little bit.
Okay, because that was something when I read about it and looked into it and just the societal impacts of it, it was really frustrating to me that we weren't integrating that more into understanding of why not allowing abortion and reproduction. Okay, so I was just wondering if there was a way you would able to tie 770 into.
I'm not as familiar with the Romanian experience, but I do know that governments have banned abortion before, and our own government has here in the U.S., obviously, before Roe. And what we do know is abortion does not stop, okay? It continues to happen. And we are kind of seeing it in a more limited sense already in the United States, as we have pockets of this country where, even though abortion isn't illegal, the ability to access it has become impossible. So in Texas, they have closed, I think, through a variety of regulations and restrictions. In the last few years, they've closed over half of the clinics in the state of Texas. And one court said it's perfectly fine. It's not an undue burden for a woman to have to travel out of state to get an abortion. There's a whole big swath of Texas that's bigger than many of our states in the United States that has no provider at all. And women, it might be easier for them to actually go to Mexico. Well, that's pre-Roe. That's what women did before Roe, was go to Mexico. Or women are, and there was a researchers did a survey and interviewed women and did some statistical extrapolation that I will not pretend to understand. But they believe in Texas there are many women, thousands of women, who may be trying to self-abort because they cannot get to a clinic. And so we're seeing this again on a very smaller level in pockets here and there in the United States. We have some states like Mississippi where there's only one provider left, and they're doing everything they can to try to close him down. And so that is the goal. I think Missouri may be down to one provider now. We in Illinois see women coming from other states traveling great distances. And it's amazing to me because abortion is a very common procedure. A lot of, I think 4 in 10 women in the United States have an abortion. But it's the only procedure that's treated this way.
Hi, I'm to your left as well. Hi.
Yes.
Thanks for your talk. In the 90s, I was running a maternal child health research project and had research assistants interviewing patients on the west, south, and west sides of Chicago and abstracting medical charts. And one of the really good faith-based clinics on the south side in North Lawndale, high-quality health care, really great place. And in the charts, my RAs would find a doctor's note that said the patient's 10 weeks pregnant and doesn't want to have another baby, so we prayed. And my research assistants came home in tears, which is a different story. But the question is, it's a high-quality provider, and I'm glad they're in the neighborhood that otherwise doesn't have good health care. But is there ever have you guys ever tried to talk about, if you are getting federal funding of any sort, that you are required to present all legal options for health care? Turn it the other way around? Because those women don't have other health care providers to get that other information.
You know, that is a complicated thing that has been hashed out back and forth in the courts. And right now, as it stands, providers who get federal money have the right to refuse, have a so-called right of conscience. And in the state of Illinois, we have one of the broadest right of conscience acts in the country. It basically allows any healthcare provider, and provider includes the individual practitioner and the institution. It allows them to refuse basically anything they want to refuse, but even more so, they don't even have to talk about it. They don't have to tell you you're refusing. They don't have to provide you information about where else to go. And that is seemed acceptable. Now, I think that if you are a medical provider, you have an ethical duty to at least provide medically accurate and complete information to your patient. And if you are not either willing or qualified to provide the care that your patient needs, that you give them information about where else you can go. That doesn't implicate you morally. You're not providing the service. They're going somewhere else. And in Illinois, we are working to change our state law. I know the ACLU and a few other states have sued, mainly I think Catholic hospitals. Catholic hospital systems have been growing. The change in health care, you now have these huge hospital systems, and they're eating each other up. And the spread of Catholic health care, a lot of people don't realize the type of restrictions that are imposed by the institution. So the institution has the right of conscience, even though the patients may not share the faith and the providers within the institution may not share the faith. The institution sets the rules. And we would like to at least see that changed. One of the most egregious cases I saw, and this woman came and testified both in the House and Senate this past year when we were working on this legislation. She was pregnant, and something showed up on the ultrasound, so she went out of town to a neonatologist that was housed at a Catholic hospital who diagnosed her pregnancy. Her fetus had terrible anomalies, terrible problems, and she was raised in a religious family. She was not Catholic, but she was religious. So she and her husband went home to decide what they should do. Now, that neonatologist was at a Catholic hospital. He was not going to offer her any assistance. And she and her husband were hemming and hawing for a couple of weeks. At 22 weeks, she began to miscarry. So she went to her local Catholic hospital and went to the emergency room. miscarrying at 22 weeks with a fetus that she had been told would not survive, okay? Well, at 22 weeks, even a healthy fetus will not survive. And that hospital sent her home. And over the course of the next several weeks, she went back 4 additional times. And every time they said, well, monitor yourself if you have a fever, if the bleeding gets heavier, blah, blah, blah. They did not refer her somewhere else. They did not tell her what the implications were for her to wait, which are very serious health implications. And finally, the 5th time she showed up in the emergency room, sorry if I'm graphic, but she brought all the clothes and pads that she had bled through and put them on the gurney and said, have I bled enough? Can you please help me? And then they agreed to finally induce labor, and she gave birth to a dead baby. This shouldn't happen. And this is not, this is not about abortion. This is about caring for a woman who really, really wanted to have a baby, and something horribly wrong happened, and she spent weeks miserable, fearful about her own health. She now has a beautiful little boy. She's doing very well. But she came from a background where she never expected this issue to come up in her life. Never. She's not an activist type person. But because this happened to her, she felt she needed to come forward. And that's another example of justice. This woman was not given justice, and we have a law that allowed that hospital. They cannot be sued for malpractice under our state law, and we want to change that. Sorry for the long answer. Just had to share that. So, yes.
Question here. In shopping around on the Illinois Gov health insurance, I noticed a number of the options I was looking at did not provide for abortion. Mm-hmm. What is the status with the affordable health care and abortion? Is it allowed for premium? Are these providers just electing not to do it, or is it not allowed?
It is allowed, but it is not required. And no state can force insurance providers to cover abortion, but states can ban coverage. So Illinois is a state that does not ban insurance coverage in the Affordable Care Act in the marketplace. It is allowed. The first year that we went into the Affordable Care Act and they were developing the marketplace, they selected, it's called an Essential Health Benefits Plan. That is a model plan. It's one of the plans that serves the small groups in Illinois, and they looked at the various plans, the biggest plans that serve the most people, and figured out which one would be like their model plan, and that if you had these basic things in coverage, you are qualified. And they picked a Blue Cross plan that did cover abortion. I checked it out. I wrote comments to the committee who was deciding this, and we said, yes, this is good, this is great, this plan is fine. And at the time, actually, abortion was pretty common in being covered by insurance. It's usually covered just like any other surgical or medical procedure. Since then, we have seen a decline in the number of plans that are covering abortion. And this is not just happening in Illinois, it's happening nationwide. And we're not quite sure why it is. We know that there is the Nelson Amendment that was put on the Affordable Care Act that says that the part of the premium that covers abortion has to be paid by the enrollee, okay? Because some people get government subsidies and government money can't be used for abortion, so you have to pay that portion of the premium. It's a few dollars. We don't know if the insurance plans are just being lazy and they don't want to do the accounting of this, so they're just not covering abortion. We don't know if they are under some misdirection that they think they have to follow the Hyde Amendment. So you have a lot of plans that are saying we only cover abortion under, for rape and incest and life, which is the Hyde Amendment. We're not sure, and that's something that Planned Parenthood is working with the ACLU on to try to figure out what's going on. We don't have the ability under the Affordable Care Act to force plans, but what I find distressing is that there are Blue Cross plans that used to cover abortion very commonly that now don't. So there's been a decision made, and once we get all our information together, we're going to start approaching the insurance companies and saying, what's going on here, and why can't we get this coverage? Because we've been getting complaints about it.
I have a question right next to
yes.
right next to the last person. I have a question for you about where Planned Parenthood is thinking about gun control as a healthcare issue. I ask because I was intrigued by the idea of reproductive justice being a little bit more broad, right? Looking at the whole political power, economic power, looking at things like sick pay. So I could see making an argument or having the rationale that gun control is also one of those types of issues that affects women and families and the ability to raise healthy, happy children, and that this might be important for Planned Parenthood to align with. But I could also see the rationale that it might dilute your focus, it might not be strategically important. So I wonder if there have been discussions, or you anticipate there may be discussions around gun control as a healthcare issue, and Planned Parenthood joining some alliances.
Well, Planned Parenthood does not have an official position on gun control, but there does seem to be obviously something that's going on that's very serious. And it has hit us in our own health center. And I think that we are having some discussions. We're evolving. I don't know where Planned Parenthood is going to go. But being Planned Parenthood of Illinois, we are keenly aware of it because we have health centers in areas of Chicago where there is a great deal of gun violence. And it hit us in a personal way in October when one of our employees who she serves at our Englewood Health Center, she was killed. She was killed a block away from her home by a stray bullet. And so this is something that because of what, we know the gun violence in Chicago, we know how serious it is, and then we have this whole separate issue of these mass shootings where it apparently appears that most of them are able to get very high-powered weapons that can cause a lot of destruction in a matter of minutes, and they can do this legally. I think it's an issue that we all have to examine. I don't know where Planned Parenthood is going to come out on it, but it's definitely something that we've been talking about.
Okay, we've got time for one more quick question.
I don't know if this is going to be a quick question, but I really don't understand the religious component as it is associated with abortion itself. Can you just enlarge on how the perception or the guidelines given by major religions are regarding the act of having an abortion? I would imagine that Catholics and Baptists and evangelicals and Muslims and Jews all have certain guidelines to their practitioners, or maybe that's not the right word, but all of their patrons on whether they are in favor or against it. And I'm just curious about that because, I hear a lot of the opposition. I wonder how much of it comes from major religion.
That's a very good question. There is, and I think sometimes the media does not really reveal this point of view. Usually there's this impression that the religious people, the churchgoers, the religious people are the ones against abortion, right? But there is actually a very wide range of religious doctrines on the issue of abortion. And that is true in Christianity, it's true in Judaism, it's true in a lot of faiths. So you have in Christianity, you will have the Catholic Church, which is very clear that they are opposed to abortion, they are opposed to any form of artificial birth control. I'm most familiar with that doctrine because I was raised in it. Also by very sneaky nuns who, even though in sex ed class they told us that birth control was wrong, they also informed us on how every single method worked. I don't know if it was because 10% of my class by the time I graduated had babies. I don't know. But anyway, but then you also have Methodists who are very respectful of women's personal decisions and autonomy and believe that a woman is the right person to make her decision. And so Planned Parenthood, we actually have religious leaders who work with us. We have a clergy board. And so there is a wide range of opinion. I don't think that it gets translated out publicly, but there are religious and there are faithful and church-going people who support Planned Parenthood's position just as much as there are those who oppose it.
Brigid, thank you so much